I wanted to talk a bit about why we should care about Plato's account of Atlantis. 2,500 years ago, the world's greatest Greek philosopher described the civilization that was lost 9,000 years before his time in his dialogues, the Timaeus and Cri, and this is what he said. Then listen, Socrates, to a tale which, though strange, is certainly true, not mere legend, but an actual fact. Plato has taken great pains to make sure his readers believed his words, not only with these admonitions, but with astonishingly precise details of every aspect of the civilization: the circular city, the surrounding areas, the people, their laws, what they grew, what they ate, and how they went from having an ideal society to a greedy, violent, depraved one that ultimately destroyed itself. Even in his day, Plato was the most revered philosopher and teacher in Athens. Yet, the moment he published these two dialogues, the naysayers began saying, "Nay, nay, this isn't the fact. This isn't the true history of the world. This is myth. This is allegory. This is Plato trying to describe a utopian society." Even his famous student Aristotle joined in the bad-mouthing. Today, those who dispute Plato will do anything but believe what the poor man turned himself inside out trying to make people believe. Ridicule, derision, charges of crackpotism are heaped on those who believe Atlantis existed, and worse for those who spend time and money trying to find what's left of it. Interestingly, even among those who risk their careers and reputations to search for it, especially archaeologists, there are still Plato naysayers. Most of them are especially loath to admit his time frame of 9,000 years before his time that pinpoints the destruction of Atlantis to 11,600 years ago. This is primarily because they cannot imagine an advanced civilization 6,000 years before the Egyptians or the Sumerians. They like to say, Plato didn't know what he was talking about. He didn't mean 9,000 years before his time. He goofed. He actually meant 900 years. Why would they do this? Because these researchers have a conflict of interest. They have their own pet theory about where Atlantis was located. Many of them have decided it can be found within the Mediterranean Sea, and they believe it sank much more recently than 11,600 years ago. In order for their theory to work, they need the dates for the destruction of their Atlantis to match a catastrophic eruption of the volcanic island called Thera 3,500 years ago. This event, it did bury what was left of Santorini Island and its city, Akrotiri, under hundreds of feet of ash. And the eruption also caused a giant tsunami that wiped out another culture flourishing back then 200 miles south of Santorini on the island of Crete. For some reason, even the most ardent cynics have latched on to this location and this time frame as the final solution to the problem, probably because it falls within the accepted history of the ancient world. These archaeologists insist the ruins found on Santorini and Crete match Plato's description of Atlantis. Except they don't. The theory is desperately trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. But a lot of money has been spent on it, and now there's a thriving tourist industry on the island of Santorini that is never going to let you believe Atlantis existed anywhere but there. In my novel, Atlantos, I dispute these mainstream researchers. I've chosen to use information gathered by my personal heroes of prehistorical research. These men and women brilliantly challenge mainstream authority to bring us what I consider the most recent, most plausible, cutting-edge evidence available about ancient lost civilizations. And I have chosen to use Plato's dialogues as my most important historical source. I think it's foolish to naysay not only the best, but the only writer on the subject. What I've done is simply chosen to take him at his word. And this turns out to be the most wonderful confluence of evidence because, and I just love this, Plato's date for the destruction of Atlantos 11,600 years ago coincides exactly with the end of the last ice age and the resulting Great Flood. At that time, the coastlines all over the world were submerged by rising sea levels. So you have history, you have climatology and geology and archaeology, and ruins above and more than 100 feet underwater, pointing to the same conclusion at the same date. This is like winning super lotto for me. As a historical novelist, I pride myself on doing loads of deep research of whatever period and characters I'm writing about. I'm also a bit of a fanatic about sticking to what facts I'm sure of. Then, if there are holes in the facts, and there always are, I give myself permission to extrapolate from those facts and invent what seems most plausible. Writing Atlantis, 12,000 years in the past, there are many, many holes in the historical record. But it's been really exciting and gratifying to connect the dots and to tell a never-before-told slice of prehistory. Something like this, I believe, needs to be as entertaining as it is informative. A narrative that's truly believable, that you can picture in your mind as you're reading. One that screams, this is not fantasy, this is history. I think that's when it gets real for people, for the naysayers and the ridiculers and the ones who simply haven't thought about it before. So why should we take Plato's account of Atlantis seriously? I would ask, how can we not take it seriously? It's the only description that exists of our planet's first advanced civilization. It's written by one of the most intelligent and trustworthy human beings who ever lived, and it refutes the faulty theories of modern mainstream archaeologists who have ulterior motives and are clearly steering us wrong. I believe we're entitled to the truth about our species' origins and our evolution on Earth. I think we're entitled to know how old our culture is. And if it's true that history repeats itself, and I believe it does, then we can learn from Plato how a society behaving badly can bring about its own destruction. And what is more important than that?